Okay, so now we're going to get down to the cams and the timing. So what we're going to want to do is take out the fan by unscrewing the large nut here. Special wrench is required. And then we'll take off these idler pulleys and get ready to move the front timing cover. Okay, this is a really big wrench. I think we're going to use the smaller end of the two, which is a 1 1/4, I believe. But it's just a special wrench that can be purchased for removing these fans. It'll be the one special tool so far that you're going to need, other than a torque wrench that I can think of, and if there's any other, I'll be sure to include it. But it fits onto the shaft like so. Then there's another spanner wrench that goes around these big bolts to hold the pulley from turning while you knock this fan loose. Okay, now we've removed the water pump, the idler pulleys, the belt drive tensioner, and the idler pulley on that side. Now we're ready to remove the crank bolt out the harmonic balancer down there, so we can remove that. Then we'll be able to start on all these bolts on the timing covers. Okay, when you get the crank bolt off, you'll need a puller set similar to the one shown here to put it into the harmonic balancer down there and use it to pull it off, because it's going to be a pretty tight fit. I do not recommend putting pry bars between the timing cover and the harmonic balancer. You'll do some damage. Get your puller set, do it right, you'll be done. Okay, and with the harmonic balancer out of the way, you're ready to start on the timing cover and the power steering pump. The power steering pump is going to be bolted to the timing cover right here, probably a 3 or 4 bolt pattern, I can't remember which. Be at the back side of the pump running into the housing. And of course the cover will be self-explanatory with a series of bolts around through here. Careful to ID which ones are the water pump and which ones are the timing cover, as they get kind of confusing down there on the underside. You just find yourself removing bolts that you don't necessarily need to. Now on this particular job we're going to be doing a water pump as well, so I'm going to remove it all. Okay, so now that we have all our pulleys off, we've dropped our power steering pump and dropped it there to the side. A little bit of difficulty in detaching the high side power steering line before removing this lower bolt right here, but it's no problem, you'll make it through just fine. Get all the bolts out of the cover, including the ones in the top of the valve cover that come straight down to hold it here. One time you have all your bolts out and you're fairly confident, take you a bar, and when I say carefully, I mean very carefully, work it until it pops loose. You want to work it on both sides because she's glued in really well. If you have any resistance at a certain spot, investigate, make sure you're not missing any bolts. This cover will come off fairly easily with a little bit of convincing. Okay, so we popped the cover off. I've reinstalled the crank bolt onto where the harmonic balancer was removed, so I could turn the engine over to a suitable position where I like it to remove all these timing components. Now I'm not going to bother with timing this thing with the factory specs, meaning I'm not going to turn it around to top dead center and all like that. I'm just going to work with where I'm comfortable, and it's no sense in setting it up that way whenever I'm just after tearing down and putting back together. So what I've done is I've rolled these cams around to where, if you'll notice, the tops of the cams have these little holes in them. Those are for an alignment tool. Again, we're not going to use the alignment tool, but I'm just showing you. You can see right there beside it, I've made a black mark on there as a reference for the camera, and then another one right there on the tit of the cam retainer cap. That hole is going to line up with that cap, and if you'll look over here at this other cam, you'll notice the hole is there as well. Slightly off-centered, but that's okay. If you'll also notice, I've marked the chain. Now I've used a permanent marker, but I've also, if you can notice, I've slightly scribed it with an angle file. There's also 12 rollers between my top teeth. And by rollers, I mean, of course, they're little rollers in between the chain. You want to make note of all those positions, mark them so you can put them back exactly the way they were. If you do turn the crankshaft while you have it assembled, you'll need to put it back exactly to where you have it. So also make note of where the crankshaft position is. And of course, make note of where your cam gear is positioned as well. One time you noted all those positions, you'll want to know the number of links between the top chains. You'll probably take it out as a total assembly. I'll show you later. But you'll just want to make reference of to where all these chains position, link numbers and all is at, because you'll want to put it back exactly where you pulled it apart from. Okay, we've taken our main drive gear off, and then we slid out the exhaust cam. And the reason we slid out the exhaust cam, because if you was to grab a hold of your tensioner, it squeezes together pretty easily. So what you do is you pull the camel loose. It'll pop up at the rear. Do not grab it at the rear and pull it up. These cams are sensitive to pressure. What you'll actually want to do is push it down at the rear, and the front will pop up a loose. The cam will come loose. Then you can squeeze together your tensioner, as I showed you, giving you enough slack to guide the cam up and out the journal and slide it out of this gear here rather easily. Now you're ready to yank out this cam, pull out all your little rockers, and put them up. Don't worry about where they go. They'll be fine where they're at. We're going to yank out this cam, pull the head. Okay, so we removed our cams. Got them all out of the way. You got a 10mm nut at the very back of the corner right there that you're going to have to remove. Removed the dipstick and disconnected the 2 bolts down here on the exhaust manifold, disconnecting the manifold. There's a little trick to getting this dipstick tube out. On the very bottom of the dipstick, all the way down there at the block, there'll be a little fat ring on it where it won't allow it to go any further into the block. But there'll be a small space where you can insert your screwdriver right there in that little gap. While wiggling this dipstick, if you was to work the screwdriver, the dipstick will pop right up, at which point you can wiggle it and pull it. You just want to pull it to this stage right here, because you don't want to bend it getting it out. You want it to go back in just as smoothly as you get it out. So we're going to pull it all out as a big chunk. The cylinder head, the manifold, and the dipstick tube all assembled. We're just going to work it right out of the hole and throw it on the bench and see what we got. And one time you fought yourself through getting that big heavy thing out of that hole, this is what you're left with. Gasket usually remains on the block. Of course, you want to clean up all these surfaces really, really well. Torque procedures to put them all back together. And you're there. You got it off. Good luck putting it back together. Yeah, you should end up with a pile of motor parts that looks something like this. Not too bad. You'll be able to fit it all back in there. Now let's go take a look at that cylinder head and see where the leak is coming from. We're about to show you the cylinder head and where the leak's coming from, so y'all get ready for this. Alright, so we got the cylinder head off. We put it up on this platform so we can get a better look at it. The complaint on these cylinder heads is usually between, well, hell, it could be through any of these back 3 cylinders here, or the back 3 there, excuse me. The front one's usually okay, but somewhere up in here you'll find them. And when you're looking at these, you're going to just eyeball them. You're going to say, wow, you know, I don't really see a problem with those, Lewis. They look great. But here's a little trick we can do to show you exactly where it's coming from. This is old school here, so y'all just bear with me. But this is to show you guys how you can do it at home. What we're going to do is take a little bit of water in a bucket here. We're going to pour it right down the manifold. That's going to test these exhaust valves, which is where the 5.4 is having the problem at. I've already done this and set it up once and seen it. So now if you'll look, we got this little waterfall coming out down here. Get a good shot. If you'll see, the water's just, you know, flowing out from around that valve. Now, if it won't hold water, it won't hold compression. So that's a pretty sizable leak. Again, without the water, the valves are going to appear like this. You're not going to see where it's at. This will allow you to say, okay, there's my problem.